of climate change, and I wish all the very best for this program. Thank you so much.
Next, I would like to welcome Ms. Juna Testin Matthew, Trainee Social Work of Sri Shabrisha College, for the felicitation.
Good morning to all. It's a great pleasure and privilege to organize a national conference on climate change. I stand before you today with great joy and pride. First of all, I would like to congratulate all the esteemed personalities who have volunteered to present a very useful session about the topic climate change. And I congratulate all the out-of-state participants who are participating in this national conference. Climate change is a global problem today. The biggest threat that we are facing today is climate change. It's a very dangerous. If we don't tackle it, its consequences are deadly. We will learn more about the climate change in this session today. It is the second national conference we organize on the topic climate change. And I wish everyone a successful completion of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Juna. Next, I invite Sona Biji, Trainee Social Worker of Sri Shabrisha College, for vote of thanks.
Good morning to all, respected dignitaries on the dais, all the participants and eminent personalities of this second series of national conference organized by PG Department of Social Work, Sri Shabrisha College. I honor to deliver vote of thanks for this inaugural function. First of all, I thank our chief guest, Barbara Shan, Secretary IASSW, present. Thank you, ma'am. I thank Professor V.G. Harish Kumar, Principal in charge and Head of the PG Department of Social Work, Sri Shabrisha College, for the valuable sense. Thank you, sir. I thank Mr. K.R. Gangatharan IRS, Assistant Director, Directorate of GST Intelligence, Zonal Officer, Kochi, and Chairman of Malaria Educational Trust for his valuable presence. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I thank all faculty members of Sri Shabrisha College, the great support and presence. Thank you all. Thank all the participants of second national conference organized by of Social Work, Sri Shabari. Thank you so much.
Now the inaugural section is over. Read, sir. Now the inaugural session is over.
Yeah, morning, sir. Shall we start the
The
technical
inaugural
session
section.
one?
Okay.
Yeah, the inaugural session is over, sir.
Okay. I'm
Sure.
leaving.
Thank you everybody for participating in the inauguration of the second national conference. So now we are going to start the first technical session of the second national conference organized by the PG Department of Social Work, SBCONLINE College. So the first session is a very fruitful one because it starts with a question: who changes the climate? So the subject is being taken by a very experienced person, the senior principal scientist of Kerala Forest Research Institute. And the session will be moderated by the assistant professor of PG Department of Social Work, Sri SABARI College, Kerala. So let me invite Ms. Roslyn Marriott George, is the first year MSW student of Sri SABARI College, the resource person and moderator for the technical session 1.
Professor Jitesh as a moderator of this technical session. So I welcome Professor Jitesh sir to handle the technical session moderator.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, dear participants, I kindly request you to kindly mute your audio. Participants, kindly mute your audio. It is not clear for us. Okay, dear participants, we are moving to the session. The first session will be dealt by Dr. T.V. Sajeev. He is the senior principal scientist at the Kerala Forest Research Institute, and he has a vast experience in the field of insect population dynamics, biocontrol, and alien invasive species. He is involved in managing tree health helpline in Kerala and research on management of giant African snail. He's also coordinating tree health helpline desk in KFRI, and he has also got patent for developing a biopesticide as well. And he has published national, international journals and books as well. So we are very much happy to welcome Dr. T.V. Sajeev for handling our session on the topic, who changes the climate? So I welcome Dr. T.V. Sajeev for the session. Sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Jinesh sir. I think I'm audible. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry that I could join the inaugural session only when Jinesh sir was speaking. So I missed whatever has happened before that. So I'm extremely extremely fresh to the whole thing. I have a presentation which I'll be uploading now, and I think I will not be taking a lot of time presenting myself, but then I'll be reserving a lot of time for the discussions which can happen. So you can be free to ask questions either during the presentation or after the presentation. You can unmute your mic and ask the question, or you can use the chat box to put your questions. Because I'm the first thing is to thank Sri SABARI College for inviting me to talk to you on a very important topic. So many thanks for the invitation. I'm uploading my presentation now. I hope the PPT is visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible.
Yeah, okay. So my question is basically this, and at the end of this session, we should be able to answer this particular question: who changes the climate? Uh, we all know that there's something happening with the climate right now. The rains are becoming unpredictable. Uh, Many of you have been who have residents in Kerala would have experienced a situation where whenever the school reopens on June 1st every year, we used to start the southwest monsoon. But that days are gone. We are unable to predict when the southwest monsoon, the largest rainfall in Kerala, starts. Now it is becoming very unpredictable. So uh, who has really done this? What has happened to the climate? This is a question which we will be addressing, and we will be coming to the question, and also we will be discussing what we can do about it. Now, the first question is this: is the climate changing? Are you very sure that the climate is changing? This is a book by the book title. It's a novel. The title of the novel is State of Fear. I think everybody know Michel Christian in a different context. He was a person who wrote the novel Jurassic Park, which was made into a film later on, which was an international super hit. Michael Christian, in this particular novel, it's a long novel with a large number of chapters, tables, in which he argues that there is no climate change happening. And his argument is that climate change is a bogus thing. There's no scientific data for it. And it is just the environmental groups across the globe who says that climate change is happening. The protagonist in the novel is a person who defends that, and he really argues that climate change is happening. And he is putting up almost all possible explanations for that. But as we come to the end of the novel, the protagonist fails, and he is forced to accept that climate change is not happening. So this is the one major book which denied climate change is happening. There are many people across the globe who don't think that the climate change is changing because of human interference. But then the scientific data says a totally different story. We have actual measurements of the global temperature for a large number of years now, and we have been able to reconstruct the temperature at different points in Earth's history. On screen, you can see what has happened starting from 1880 to 2000. You can see the red line, which shows the amount of carbon dioxide, the parts per million carbon dioxide in the atmospheric air. Starting from 1880, you can see the red line gradually going up. And there's a steep increase which is happening starting from the 1970s. It is having a truly upward trend. And you can also see on the blue line what is happening to the global temperature. You can see it is almost closely following the increase of carbon dioxide. So both are on the rise. And this is the problem which we are going to discuss now. And what is this particular point? Starting from here, it is going very steeply. And what happened at this point of time is what we are really interested in. What prompted this upward trigger of both carbon dioxide and the global temperature? Now, what is the problem with this? What happens if the temperature increases? I spent a bit of time on this particular graph and explain to you what are the real impacts which we are feeling because of the increase in temperature. Now, we need to distinguish, before going into the impacts, we need to distinguish between two different problems. One is the problem of ozone hole caused by chlorofluorocarbons, which was mentioned by Jijay sir, which is a totally different problem from climate change. When you have CFCs put into the atmosphere, what happens is that the chlorofluorocarbons goes up, and there's a layer of a thin layer of ozone in the atmosphere. Ozone is O3, while oxygen is O2. And what it does is to split the O3 into O2 so that the ozone depletes. And what happens when the ozone depletes is that it gives way for ultraviolet radiation from the sun to reach the planet. So that is a problem regarding ozone hole, which is getting repaired. And globally, there was a big campaign which happened, started from the Rio summit, which happened in '92 at Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. There was a big campaign which has happened, and there's a big replacement which has happened with regarding CFCs, and we have almost crossed over that problem. And so ozone hole is a problem which has been solved. So that's a different issue. When I speak of global warming, that's a different issue caused not by CFC but caused by carbon dioxide increases. And when the carbon dioxide increases, what happens is that the amount of greenhouse gases, in which there are many different gases, including water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, carbon monoxide, all these gases, when they are released to the atmosphere, they go up to the layer called the greenhouse, the layer of greenhouse gases. And the thickness of the greenhouse gas layers increase. So in the case of ozone, what happens is that the ozone layer is getting depleted. But in this particular case, the greenhouse gas layer is being expanded. The thickness is increasing. So what is the problem of thickness, increasing the thickness? What happens is that this particular layer is the layer which prevents the escape of heat from the planet. So what it does is to allow the sun rays and the heat to reach the surface of the globe, but then any reflected heat from blocked the planet. So it is just like on a very cold night. On a night, you'll be comfortable within a blanket. You'll be feeling hot inside a blanket, and you'll have a comfortable sleep. But what happens if you are using 2 blankets, or if you are using 3 blankets? What happens is that you will become, you will feel really hot, even though the outside is very cool. So that is the problem with global warming. The thickness of the greenhouse gas layer is increasing, and it doesn't allow any heat to escape from the planet. Any heat radiated from the planet is sent back to the planet, and gradually the temperature is increasing. So we are now witnessing almost a 1 degree centigrade increase starting from 1970s. And just this small increase, we are speaking about the global average. The global average temperature of our planet is around 14 degrees centigrade, between just 14 and 15 degrees centigrades. And it is just the average is getting increased. So one of the first impacts is that on both the poles of the planet, there's a big ice caps are there, and the ice caps are starting to melt. And when the ice caps melt, what happens is that the water will be coming to the oceans, and the sea level will be rising. And when the sea level rises, it can flood a large amount of land masses. All along the fringes of the continents, the sea level is rising, and many of the places are going underwater. Many of the Pacific islands, small islands in the Pacific Ocean, have already gone underwater. Our neighboring country called Maldives is under serious threat of sea level rise, because the Maldives Islands, the maximum height of the island from the sea level is just 4 meters. So they are really finding it extremely difficult. They are trying to move out from the country. People are starting to buy land in Sri Lanka, Australia, New Zealand, and they are trying to move out from that. So this is the first impact, that we are losing land because of the rise in sea levels. And the second impact is that the species would move to comfortable zones. So from the equatorial area, the species are moving towards the poles. They move either northward or they climb up the mountains. So there's data coming up from Kerala itself. Many of the fishes which we used to collect from the shores of Kerala are now captured from shores of Visakhapatnam. The big groups of fishes are moving towards the poles. And on the land, what is happening is that the terrestrial animals are moving from the lowland to the highland. And in Kerala, we can witness a movement of species starting from the low-lying areas to the upper reaches of the Western Ghats. Now, this happens. One of the interesting questions which we need to ask here is move up to the for the species which are already there on the top of the Western Ghats. there's no space to move, and what is going to happen is what we call as the local extinction of species. So Kerala is going to witness a serious species extinction because of increasing climate change and the movement of species up the mountains. So another problem is that when the species move, the ecosystem functions break up. Ecosystem, as you know, is a system where all the species are interlinked. Like, for example, you might have learned in your schools that a pond is an ecosystem. All the living things and the abiotic things over there are interlinked. And there's a food chain and a food web which is operating over there. When the temperature increases and when the species move out from there, what happens is that every species moves at their own paces. And that will completely fracture the existence of the ecosystem. So this is the next impact of climate change. We are facing local extinction rights, and the second is the extinction going to happen. I move ahead. We'll speak about the impacts later also. This picture on the screen speaks about the different stages of the evolution of the planet. Right here at the 12 o'clock point, the Earth, 4,550 million years ago, the Earth started its movement. 4.6, then it moves through this area. The first period, which is shown in pink over here, is the Hadean period, which moves over to the Archean period, then to the Proterozoic period, then the Mesozoic period, and then the. So this is a big classification process of what is happening in the planet. If you look a bit more closely, starting from here, Earth forms 4.6 billion years ago, and then you have the Paleozoic, Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic, which is further divided into the Archean period. Then comes the Paleozoic period, in which it is divided into Cambrian, Ordovician, Silurian, Devonian, Mississippian, Pennsylvanian, and the Permian era. Then we move over to the Mesozoic period, which is divided into the Triassic, Jurassic, and the Cretaceous period. Then comes the Eocene, Oligocene, Miocene, Pliocene, Pleistocene, and Holocene. So Holocene started 10,000 years ago. And when I was in school, I was taught that we are living in Holocene, and Holocene is the name of the period in which we are living. But then, apparently, scientists doesn't believe so. Scientists believe that we have from this Holocene has already stopped, and we are now moved over to another epoch called as the Anthropocene. Was a proposition which has come up. It has not yet formed. The working group on is going to have meeting. Because of the COVID issues, the meeting had been postponed. If there was no COVID, it would have been meeting much early, and they would have formally declared that we are now not living in Holocene but in Anthropocene. But informally, everybody agrees that we are in Anthropocene. And what is the difference between Holocene and Anthropocene, and why do we classify it as Anthropocene? Anthropocene is a period, or currently we are living in a period in which the impact of human beings has gone to every nook and corner of the planet. There is no system in the planet, the impact of human activities. So that is the trademark of Anthropocene. Now, it is proposed geological epoch dating from the commencement of the significant human impact on Earth's geology and ecosystems, including to anthropogenic climate change. So we normally say is that climate change started along with Anthropocene. And how did that happen? We will go into that story right now. The person who started off Anthropocene with a very interesting invention, his name is Thomas Newcomen. It happened in 1712. What he did was to design an engine called the Newcomen engine. The purpose of this engine was very interesting. Until then, the energy which we were using on the planet for many different purposes were all on the surface of the planet. We were using the energy of our muscles. The slave trade process can go without any problem. Now, before going into the details of Novacene, I want to introduce another person. His name is James Lovelock. James Lovelock was a person who excited we people when we were students with an interesting hypothesis called the Gaia hypothesis. He told that the whole of the earth is a living organism, which is a self-regulatory organism. So that was the brilliance of that particular theory. That was a very interesting theory which we learned at school and colleges. But now, his recent book, which has come a few months before, James Lovelock is now 99 years old. He's about to touch his 100th birthday in the forthcoming months. And probably he says that this is going to be his last book. The title of the book is Novacene. And what is Novacene? James Lovelock says that Anthropocene has already come to a close, and we are now in a different epoch called as Novacene. And what is Novacene? How is Novacene different? Now, it is that people will not be living alone. Their life, their thoughts, their activities will be complete intelligence. You can feel it right now. Like, think of a situation where you doesn't have your mobile with you. Think of a situation where you have to live for a week or a month or a year without a mobile phone. I would say that it would be impossible for you. This is just the proof that we are now. You cannot live just like just with your body or whatever you could do with nature and yourself. You need artificial intelligence. You need softwares. You need hardwares to support your life. And we are now in an epoch called Novacene. And Lovelock argues that an artificial intelligence in the future will save both the planet and the human race from catastrophic climate change. The robots will recognize the danger of climate change to themselves and act to stop it. It's a big prediction which has come from Lovelock. That is a totally different topic, but I just wanted to inform the students that you need to take care of what James Lovelock is saying. I just wanted to introduce this very interesting scientist, author, to you, and welcome you to read the book Novacene. We'll get back to climate change. Now, the major problem with the question, who is really creating this climate change? We could say that it is the people who have the largest carbon footprint. And what is carbon footprint? Carbon footprint is the amount of carbon we burn every day for our life. Now, I burn carbon when I drive a car or drive a motorbike or a scooter. I burn carbon when I cook food if I'm using or gas. I burn carbon when I use electricity, which is produced by from thermal power plants. I burn carbon when large amount of carbon is used for transporting the food materials from the place of production to my home. So all this adds up, and I will have a carbon footprint. Every one of us have a carbon footprint, and that is all different. I'll tell you a small example. If you're walking to your workplace, or if you're walking to your school or college, your carbon footprint will be very low. If you're using a bicycle, it will also be very low. But if you're using a scooter or a motorbike, your carbon footprint will start to increase because the fuel used in the carbon footprint will be put into your account. If you're using a car, your carbon footprint still increases. If you're using a big car, the carbon footprint will be much more. If you are a person who flies in the aeroplanes very frequently, your carbon footprint will be very, very high. So now you can understand. You can try to answer the question which I posed: who causes climate change? We are getting into the answer. The climate change is caused by the people who have the largest carbon footprint. And who are the people who have the largest footprint? The global disparity in carbon footprints is shown in this particular graph. As you can see, the number one position is occupied by the United States of America. Nearly 14.995 tons of carbon per person every year. It is per capita. So it is a per person value which is put over there. And next comes Canada, next comes South Korea, then comes Japan, then comes Germany, then United States, Italy, France, Brazil, and India. Now this is the situation, and we are already coming to answer who causes the who changes the climate. We know this graph is the answer. It is the developed countries who needs a large amount of carbon for this substance, who are really changing the climate. Like for example, the United States, everyone in a family will have to have a car. The amount of carbon they spend for supporting each individual's life out there is so high. And normally people used to say that if all the people on the planet would have to live like people living in the United States, we'll have to have a couple of more planets to get the resources. So that's the situation. So whoever burns more carbon is causing the climate change. Now this is the emissions per capita on the global. You can see the dark brown areas are the countries which produce the largest carbon emissions, and India is halfway, midway through that, when most of the African countries are the lowest carbon emitters of the planet. So which country is good for the planet and which for the health of the planet or sustainability of the planet? You will see that it is not the developed countries, but it is the developing countries which is helping the survival of the planet. Now, this is another interesting person. His name is Noam Chomsky. Abraham Noam Chomsky is an American linguist, philosopher, cognitive scientist, historian, social critic, and also a political activist. He's called as the father of modern linguistics. He's a major figure in analytic philosophy and one of the founders of the field of cognitive science. And on screen is a very interesting statement which he made in a district called Ernakulam, near to a place called Tirupulithura. But I am now speaking to you from Thrissur because I work here. So when I get a job here, when I started from my home, I pack my bag, I take my dress, also my purse and I come to Thrissur and I can live here without any problem. Whatever I used to do at home here, I can go to the film, I can go for a haircut, I can go to clothes. Everything is possible right here, and I don't mind shifting from Tirupulithura to a place called Pechi in Thrissur. It doesn't cost. But there are people on this planet who cannot move that way. People who are so connected to their ecosystem, like the fishermen, like the tribes who are living in the forest. They cannot be just displaced like that. You cannot just take them from there and put in some other place. It will be completely shattered. And those are the people whom we call as the ecosystem people or the indigenous people. And Noam Chomsky says that they are the people for survival. Why is it so? It is because they are the people who have the lowest carbon footprint on the planet. They are the people who use the least fossil fuels for their survival. And just because of that, Chomsky would say that they are the people who is the only hope for survival on this particular planet. There are large number of indigenous people. They come in many different languages, many different worldviews, many different customs, and the diversity within the indigenous people, the tribe, is so huge than the diversity in the mainstream population. And they are the people who know nature, they are tuned to nature, they can understand nature, and they can learn from nature, and they can adapt to whatever conditions which is offered by nature. And I would say that if the whole of human beings or Homo sapiens is to be represented, these are the people who represent human beings. Every others, including me and you, we are all cut away from nature. We doesn't understand nature. We are so far away from it. And these are the people who really run the show. These are the people who understand nature. And as Noam Chomsky told, these are the people who are the hope for survival. Now, what is the difference? What is the difference between the indigenous people and the mainstream population like we people? There are 6 cardinal differences. I'll go to each one of them. The first one is that the indigenous people are a spiritually oriented society, and their system is based on belief and mysticism. They used to believe in many different things, and they have a spiritual situation. Many of the indigenous people, that whoever dies doesn't go anywhere, they just become invisible, so they are all around. So whatever actions they do is being seen by their forefathers, foremothers, their parents, their grandparents, their parents. So everybody is right here. So you are not just alone. So you are under the watchful eyes of the entire generations of people whom you had interacted with. And also they would say that it is not just their parents or forefathers or grandmothers. It is all the living beings. They are also right here. When they die, they just become invisible. Nothing is gone. So if there's a land in the forest, deer in the forest, even if it's dead, it is there. So they feel that they are living under the watchful eyes of every living organisms which has lived in the planet, and that's a big responsibility. So you are under the watchful eyes. So that is their spirituality. So that is what they think. But the mainstream population, we people are scientific. We are skeptical about all these things. We need proof as a basis for belief. We need scientific proof to believe that something is happening. For example, when COVID came up, nobody has seen the COVID virus, but then we all believe there's a virus called that because there's a scientific proof. Scientists have told that. So we believe on scientific things, and we are really suspicious of mysticism, and we will just ignore or just wipe out, or we will laugh at the spirituality which the indigenous people are maintaining. Second difference is that the indigenous society operates in a state of relatedness. Everything and everyone is related. Every human being is related, and every human being is also related to the other living organisms, not just living, not even non-living things around them. There is a real belief that people, objects, and the environment are all connected, and they think that there is no difference between living and non-living. They are also connected. The water is connected to them. The soil is connected to them. The trees, the plants, the birds, the butterflies, the beetles, the mammals. Everybody is interrelated. So that is the basic understanding. And law, kinship, and mythology reinforce this connectedness. So every rule they have is based on this connectedness across all the living organisms, and their identity comes from these connections. So this is the way the indigenous people look at themselves and the entire nature wherein they live. But in the case of mainstream populations, we people, we have compartmentalized society, and we are becoming more so. We don't think that we are connected to the soil or the rock or the tree or the butterflies or the birds. We are compartmentalized, and this compartmentalization process is speeding up. If you go to the city, every family is a totally separate unit. You don't know who is your neighbor. And you don't depend on the connectedness, but you feel that you are absolutely compartmentalized. You are just one individual, unconnected to anything else. So this is the philosophy of the mainstream population. And the third difference is that Aboriginal people or indigenous people are beers, happy to fit in with and exist with the environment and what is happening now. They are just being there, and they just be and be happy. They are fine with the nature around them, and they exist in the environment, and they are really involved in what is happening now. They interact with that, and they just be over there, and that's why we call us they are beers. They just be over there, and they're happy with that. Coming to the mainstream population, it is different, and their identity comes from jobs and material possessions. I would say that I am a scientist, and that is my job. and I would be seen from other people based on my material posture, how big my house is, how big my car is, how good is my the dress which I am wearing. So all these are the things which gives me the identity in the mainstream situation. So people will be asking, what do you do, or where do you live? And we are basically not beers, but we are doers. But we believe that progress is important. Life is seen as a term of getting on. You always look forward, and you always look forward for progress. Like for example, we are going to have the elections over here. Every political party is speaking about development, about progress, about taking things forward. They are not happy with what is the situation right now. As I had explained earlier, while Aboriginal people are happy and they be happy. They are comfortable with the situation right now. We are not so. We are not happy with the current situation. We need to move forward. We need to advance, and everybody is speaking about development and progress. So that is a third major difference. And the fourth major difference is that for them, time is a non-linear entity. It is cyclical in nature. Time is measured as in cyclical events, and the seasons are central to this cyclical concept. So what this is they are speaking about the time in which the time moves, like you have different, and the seasons come back, summer, and then other seasons come in, and then you come back to summer. A cyclical understanding of time. But for us, time is linearly structured. We think that time starts from one point and go in a straight line forward. It is not cyclical, it is linear. The framework of months, years, days, etc. reinforces the linear structure. So what essentially happens is that we think of January moving over to February, then to March. It moves forward like that, and in the indigenous community. But look at what is happening in the mainstream situation. Whom do you respect? Do we respect the old people, or do we respect people with a large amount of wisdom? No, we respect people with power. That is the difference in the mainstream population. While the indigenous people have got a very small scale authority system, and the bureaucratic structure set up by outsiders in Aboriginal communities often fail, because those set up in positions of authority can only really have an influence over those that they are related to. And this is one of the reasons why we are not able to communicate to the indigenous community or the tribal populations, or because we both have totally different world views. And in the case of mainstream community, we have large-scale authority system. We have things like country. We have a big country. We have a prime minister. We have a president. There's a big authority system. We have states. We have chief ministers, and the authority given to roles and bureaucracy. And the relationship is established by the role. It is not based on wisdom. For example, in the case of elephants, the elephant herd is led by the oldest female elephant. And it is the oldest female elephant who has the wisdom of the landscape. She only knows where is water available during the summer, and all the travel pathways are remembered by this particular old female. And it is based on her memory that the life of the entire herd, including the kids in the group, is dependent upon. So while the indigenous communities think that it is important to have wisdom taking the leadership, or the age taking the leadership, experience taking the leadership, we think that it is the power which has to take the leadership. Coming to the last difference between indigenous communities and the mainstream communities, the indigenous community feel comfortable, and the feeling of comfort is measured by the quality of your relationships with people. This is very important. That is what makes them comfortable. It is, you are not just a single entity. Your comfort is based on the quality of your relationships with other people. That is what the indigenous people believe. But in the case of mainstream population, we feel comfortable And feeling comfortable is related to how successful you feel you have been in achieving your goals. We think of comfort as burning more carbon. When we increase our carbon output, we feel successful. Like for example, the example which I told you earlier, when I move from a bicycle to a motorbike, I feel successful. And when I shift from a motorbike to a car, I feel successful. Also, my friends, my family, my relatives, everybody will feel that I am a successful person. But what is essentially happening is that I am just increasing my carbon footprint. So, increasing carbon footprint is a way in which we look at our success and also our progress. While the indigenous community measures comfort and success based on the quality of the relations between people. So I think I have answered the question, who changes the climate? It is we who change the climate. And our only scope of escape is to understand the indigenous and their worldview and to adapt to that. Thank you. Thank you for the patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Sanjeev, for your wonderful, resourceful session. So I would urge the participants to raise queries to Sanjeev sir. If you have any queries, you can ask now. Dear participants, if you have any questions, you can raise now. There is a question in the chat box. How can we change the consumer behavior in the context of environment?
Yeah, very interesting question. See, one of the important things which we need to understand is that whatever things which we consume, if it comes from very close by, it will have very less carbon footprint. The distance from the site of production to your home is very critical in the whole consumer market. I am living in a panchayat called Panacheri Panchayat. If I am going to consume things which are produced in Panacheri Panchayat, it is a absolutely carbon comfortable process. But if I am starting to consume things which are coming from Tamil Nadu, from Karnataka, from Punjab, from China, from the Middle East, from the United States, from all across the globe. So it is a very easy thing to do. You just take the list of materials which you have purchased last month and just check from where it has originated. You will understand the amount of carbon burned for taking that particular material to your home. So you can do a simple exercise and understand what is your carbon footprint on that. And then you can gradually see if how you can shift from that particular product to your nearest neighbor. There will be farmers around. I may be having a farmer in very close by who will be producing a lot of things. And what happens is that the farmer goes to the city to sell it, and I go to the city to buy it. So if you can have local systems operating, which the tribes comfortably do, and the villages comfortably do. Every village used to have a weekly market at one point of time. In the market, all the products which is produced by people will come over there. So if I produce materials A, B, and C, I go to the market with A, B, and C, and I sell it, and I buy things which I don't produce, and that will be produced by other people. Now this is a way the decentralization of production and consumption has to happen. I hope I have answered.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions? Participants, if you have any queries, you can ask now. Sir, as per the statistics, the carbon footprint of India is very low. You have mentioned in the PPT. So, is it having an added advantage that we are using more of carbon
Yeah, actually, there's a small problem wherein if the graph which I showed you was a per capita graph
Okay.
per individual.
Okay.
Now, if I had shown a carbon emission graph of the entire country, India would have been the second.
Okay.
And when you like you have an estimate for the total carbon emitted by every country, and
Yes.
and then you divide that number with the number of people in the country to get the per capita value. Now India has got a very huge population, so the denominator is so huge that the per capita value is very low. So, but if you take the whole of India, we are in the second position. So that is not a good thing to happen. But what the take-home message is that the climate is not changed by the poor people. The climate is changed by the rich people. So that's a take-home message. And especially when I'm speaking to mostly students of social work, my message to them is that I have seen in many cases when students of social work, MSW students, students who are studying social work, when they had to do a project, they immediately go and start studying the poor people. Now, I want my advice is that stop doing that. The poor people know how to live, and they are living the best way possible. What you need to study is the behavior of the rich people, because they are the people who are really creating the problem. I have never seen MSW or social work students studying the rich people, the behavior of the rich people, the tendencies of the rich people who really damage the planet. So I would say that the Department of Social Work should shift the focus from the poor people to the rich people, because they are the people who doesn't understand. They're the people who doesn't understand the importance of life on this particular planet. Lovelock, which I have told you earlier, James Lovelock had told that if the entire life on this planet is wiped out right now, life will not originate, because the conditions which were prevalent during the origin of life has completely changed. So there's no chance that life can come back. Now that's the situation. So there's a very serious, and so that means that we will have to have a huge amount of respect to every living organisms on this planet, and every actions which we do has to have a bearing on that. So I would say that we need to shift our focus to what the rich people, and nobody studies the rich people, and we normally take it granted that whatever the rich people are doing is right, and everybody is aspiring to do the same thing. We have models like Bill Gates and people like that who just dictate what is happening. So I would like to say that you need to study the rich people, the large amount of mistakes they are doing, and their actions have to be evaluated and they have to be corrected. The poor people, they know how to survive, and they don't need the help of the social scientists to help them out. They know how to survive because they have been surviving for generations. You don't need to teach the indigenous people how to live, because they are the best people on the planet. We need to educate the rich people or the mainstream people.
Okay. My words. Any other query? Participants?
What about, please tell something about climate engineering and carbon capture and storage.
Thank you. There's a very interesting question which I have dealt with in my lecture. Very interesting question. Many people on the planet think that climate change is something which can be solved through a technological invention or a technological engineering invention. I don't believe so. This cannot be solved by a technological solution. This can be solved only by a political change in which our focus shifts over to the indigenous people, their worldview. And what is going to help us out, as Noam Chomsky had told, is how best we are going to absorb the sensibilities of the indigenous people into the way in which we are living. If we are able to work on our relationships, and if we are going to decide on the quality of our life or the success of our life based on the relationships between people and people who not just people, all the living organisms which are there around. If only we can establish our relationship with that, we will be able to solve this particular crisis. I don't think that we can engineer a success story in the case of climate change. Sorry to say that.
Okay. Okay, nice. Okay. Any other queries?
Actually, we people are trying to civilize the indigenous people always. We are taking their kids and giving education, and we are trying to civilize them. That is our way nowadays.
Yeah, sure. I totally agree that that is happening, and that's a cruel way of doing it. I would say that it is just like it is much worse than the Britishers came and ruled us. It is much more worse. We are going to the tribal hamlets, picking up the students from there, taking them away from their parents, taking them to hostels, schools, and situations where they are completely detached from their civilization, their culture, and we are teaching our culture to them as if our culture is perfect. We have a serious misconception that we are right. I'm trying to say that we are wrong. And what we are telling them is like absolutely wrong. We have never ever tried to learn from them. Like, for example, the tribal literacy program. What happened during the tribal literacy program was that we went over there and started teaching them our language, which has nothing to do with them. It is just like the Chinese coming over here and asking us to learn Chinese. Or it is just like the Britishers coming and saying that we need to learn English. Now the problem is that every language is a creation of the ecology of that particular area. Now this is very important. Like, for example, a language called Malayalam is only possible to express things which is happening in the ecosystems of Kerala. Now that is the bondage. I'll give you just one example. In Malayalam or in English, or which we are using over, how many words do we have to represent ice? Ice, the water can exist in three different forms. It can be ice, water, or the water vapor. How many words do we have to represent ice in either English or Malayalam? We just have one word called ice. But if you go to the Eskimos who are living on the poles, they have 32 words to describe ice, because they have to distinguish between different types of ice happening over there. Ice which is very hard, ice which is very soft, ice which will which will stick to your hands if you touch it. So because they are living over there, they want to distinguish between many different shades of ice. So they have 32 words for that. We don't have ice naturally in Kerala. We have it only in our refrigerators. So we just need one word for that. That is enough for us. But for Eskimos, they will have 32 words. I like to say that the language any society uses is a function of the ecosystems which are present in that particular area. Like, for example, a word called Tiruvadira Nyatuvela. Tiruvadira Nyatuvela is a word you can never see in a place other than Kerala, because that is just something which is happening in Kerala. Now, this is the importance, and this is the importance of the tribal languages also. There are many words they are using which can only represent the reality out there. And what we are doing is to completely wipe out that language and infuse a language which cannot hold the knowledge of the tribal population. So what we are doing is a genocide.
Yes.
We are completely trying to kill the people who really know how to live on this particular planet.
Absolutely right. One message.
Yeah.
Any nation that focuses on economic growth tend to be the largest in carbon emissions as well, as the economic growth propels demand for energy.
Yeah. The question which Madhuri has asked is very interesting. The last part of our question, can India see a low carbon future? I'd like to say that so the developed countries like the US and many of the European countries, they have run very fast, and they have reached a situation where they cannot come back. Now we are in a situation where we were slow runners. So we have still, when the big COVID pandemic came, which all countries could not handle it. Who are the countries in the whole planet who have been completely devastated because of the COVID incidents? Which country had the largest number of people dead because of COVID? It is all these developed countries. The US had no clue how to manage it. Many of the European countries had no clue about how to manage it. Many people died. In European countries, in UK, in Italy, people were dying like anything. Why didn't that sort of a situation happen in Africa or India? Because we have still large number of options available. We have a large number of options, not just in the tribal community. In our mainstream community, we have a large number of options. We have homeopathy, we have Ayurveda, we have traditional medicine, we have home medicine. My mother will give me medicine if she feels that I have got a cough or a fever. Now, this is something developed countries have completely erased. They doesn't have that. They just have one single option called the modern medicine. So I would say that diversity is what is stability. If you want to be stable, you have to have diverse systems with you. And the developed countries have completely eroded their cultural depth and don't have many options available in front of them. And that's a very tragic thing, which happened because they ran extremely fast and they have ran into the cave, which is absolutely dark. We are still outside the cave. We have large number of people. We have our cultural diversity. We have large number of communities, festivals, languages, songs, music. We have food items. We have medicines, different systems of medicine, and this is going to be our strength in moving ahead. So, Madhuri, I would say that Kerala and India can have a low carbon future.
How can we empower people? One question in the chat box. How can we empower people to use eco-friendly transportation like cycling?
Yeah. When I see the world people, there are different shades of people. It is not just one color. There's a multicolored other people. And there are a large number of people who are still using bicycles. There are a large number of people who are still walking. Now, what we need to do is to respect them. To respect people who use a bicycle, to respect people who are coming to office by walking, rather than respecting the people who are coming in an Audi or a Benz. Now, once you shift the focus, if you shift the parameters, this will automatically happen. It is not a question of empowering the cycling process, but then you shift the thing to that. You respect the person who come to the office in a bicycle, and then the whole change will happen. If you still look at a person who comes in a Benz or a Audi, and then you want to have a technical solution bicycle, it doesn't happen. You will have to have a scenario where you mock at people who are using large amount of carbon, and you really appreciate people who live a low carbon life. So that attitude change is what is important.
Okay. I think we can take one more question.
Yes.
Participants, if you have queries, you can ask one more question because we have another session at 11:30. Sir, what about the concept of carbon trading, where carbon is shared?
Yeah, yeah. That's an interesting thing which I didn't think that during the lecture. Thank you, sir, for mentioning that. Now, see, carbon trading is a big hoax. What happened was that essentially what was intended was that I will tell you the economics of it. Like, for example, you have a company or a factory, and there's a cap for the amount of carbon you can emit. Like, for example, you are free to emit 100 units of carbon every year. So that is your limit. Now, there's another company which also has a limit of 100 units. This is that when you run your company, you overshot your carbon. You, instead of 100, you emitted 120 units. Now, 20 units your extra emission which has happened. So now in the industry, what happens is that you can buy 20 units from another company. So if the next company has produced only 80 units, they have 20 units extra with them. So you give the money to them and buy that 20 units, so you become neutral. So this is a simple thing which has happened all across the company. What happens that based on the price of the oil every day, the unit carbon price is also fixed, and there's a large amount of trading which has happened. But essentially, this money should have gone for planting trees, and the trees are the only mechanisms by which sequester carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So what happened was that in the capitalist mode of development, the carbon trading came over and big trading happened just like in our stock exchanges. And what there's a large amount of money moving around without any solid thing happening on ground. So you can run your company. You can emit whatever amount of carbon you would like to emit. It is the only question of balancing the book at the end of the day by buying it from somebody or selling it to somebody. And this is a trading which happened all across the globe. So this is a way in which the capitalist structure robs good ideas and makes it into a mockery. So that is what happened.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much.
Again, sorry to say that.
Okay, no problem, no issue. Okay, because of the time limit, we have to wind up this session. So, moving on to the organizers, please.
So the question answer is
If time permits, there's one more question which I can. The last question, can I answer that?
Oh yeah, sure.
It is from.
That's why we move to the vote of thanks. I welcome Grishma Krish, the training social worker.
Students, 1 second. Students, 1 second, please. Sajid sir has to say a few words. Yeah, please, sir.
The last question, maybe the last question is from Haridra Bora. If all the countries become carbon neutral, can the students unmute mute their mic?
If students kindly mute, students, organizers kindly mute. Unfortunately, I think they are not hearing.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Organizers, if you can mute, sir has to comment on one thing, one question. Organizers, Sajid sir has to comment on one question, please. Sajid sir, you can.
Yeah, okay. So the last question is from Haridra Bora. If all the countries become carbon neutral, can climate change be controlled? Actually, I will explain the process in a few words. What every country is now trying, especially after the Paris Agreement, every country is now trying to peak their carbon emission as early as possible. So that is what is trying. So what is peaking? Peaking is the highest amount of carbon emission. So they are all trying to reach the peaking point as early as possible. For example, rather than peaking 10 years from now, they are trying to peak it right now so that then they can go down. So that is the philosophy behind the climate change agreements happening across the globe. So to make the peaking of carbon emission as early as possible, so that they will start to climb down. So that is the process in which, after the Paris agreement, India has signed, and with the new government in US, they are also going to sign it. So they agreed. So everybody is now trying to peak as early as possible. So that is what is happening. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Dr. Sajid sir. It was a very resourceful session. I also learned a lot of things from you. So I would urge the organizers for the vote of thanks. Please carry on. Excuse me, you are not audible, please. Dear students, you are not audible.
Good morning to all. Respected eminent personalities, faculties, and I'm here to deliver the have experienced a fruitful session by Dr. T.V. Saji, Senior Principal Scientist, Kerala Forest Research Institute, on the topic, Who Changes the Climate? Sir, we had a thorough knowledge about the topic. I express my sincere gratitude on behalf of me and of PG Department of Social Work, Sri Shabrisha College. Thank you again, sir, for your valuable words.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you. We'll meet again. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you for the excellent moderation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, can we start the next session by Ranjan, sir?
Yes, Rajesh, sir. Next, we move on to the next technical section. I welcome Sona Biji, the TSW of Sri Shabrisha College, to welcome this session. I would like to welcome the moderator of the next section, Professor Jijish, PG Department of Social Work, Sri Shabrisha College. Welcome, sir.
Okay, thank you so much. So we are moving to the second session of today's conference. So this session will be dealt by Mr. Ranjan Matthew Varghese. He is the State Director of WWF India, Kerala State Office. He has served as scientist at Center for Environment and Development at Trivandrum, and he has undertaken many projects and consultancy work as part of his work. And he is the faculty to the diploma course in Geo-Information Technology as well. So he will be discussing topic addressing climate change from global to local. So in the name of the PG Department of Social Work, I cordially welcome Mr. Ranjan Matthew Varghese to our conference. Sir, please, you can have your session.
Thank you for those kind words, and glad to be here as part of this national conference on climate change in India. I understand you must have had some very good discussions and deliberations with a lot of other experts in the previous sessions also. So the next 45 minutes that we are going to handle, if communication has to be effective, it has to be two-way communication. So don't just be passive listeners, but be very, very active thinkers, because I'm not going to talk any rocket science. I'm going to speak about addressing climate change, global to local, with things from our own state and connected to our own lives. So when I am giving you some pointers, think about things around you, your lifestyle, your habits, attitudes, and all those kind of things, so that we can make a difference as we go forward. So I'll just share my presentation. Okay, so I hope my slide is visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay, so I recently got to read a obituary about rain or climate or weather per se. So it was really, really very interesting. So I thought when I'm starting my talk, I should really share it with you also. So that it's rather very interesting how the person has written it. I don't know who is the source or who has written it, but it has been written in a very, very beautiful way, and you can read it on your own.
So we also have participants all over India also.
Okay, fine. So that will be a limitation for them, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I didn't want to translate it into English, because then you lose the essence of it. It has been written so beautifully in Malayalam by somebody else, and I don't know. I got it through WhatsApp, and I don't know the source also, so I didn't want to translate it. So it's just for the benefit of people from our own state.
Yeah, fine.
Okay, if anybody wants to get a copy of this, you can contact me, and I will share it with you with that. Okay, so coming to our session, thanks for inviting me, and I represent the organization World Wildlife Fund, as known in other major countries, or a Worldwide Fund for Nature, as it is known in India, which is the world's biggest conservation organization. Our presence is there in more than 100 countries across the 6 continents, the WWF's mission is the promotion of nature conservation and environment protection as a foundation for sustainable and equitable development. So we are stressing on nature conservation and environment protection. That is, if it was a physical webinar, I would have asked the students to interact and say what do they feel is the difference between nature conservation and environment protection. But because of the limitation of communication on the Google Meet, I'm not doing that. So, but I'll just explain that when we say about water has to be conserved, whereas a water body has to be protected. So that is essentially the difference in that. So we really need to, whatever natural resources that we have from our ecosystems and habitats, we need to conserve them, or we need to ensure that we use them wisely. Whereas all the natural ecosystems, habitats, and all that give us all these natural resources, we really need to ensure that we protect them as they are. And that should be the foundation for sustainable and equitable development. Sustainable development, as we say, development that meets the needs of today as well as the future generation. And equitable development is development not just for you and me alone, but for everybody in this society. So it should be available or accessible to all. Ultimate aim is to stop and eventually reverse environmental degradation and to build a future where people live in harmony with nature. So all the environmental degradation, be it in the 3 spheres of life, air, land, or water, is human induced. So it is our responsibility to stop this environmental degradation so that it eventually reverses. And also, whatever mistakes we have done yesterday, we should ensure that we do not repeat it tomorrow as we move forward, but we people live in harmony with nature. We have several program areas that we are working on, and climate change in energy is one major area that we are working on. And what we always say is, we wouldn't have saved all that we would like to, but we shall save a great deal more if we had never tried. So we can do it without you. Please get involved. So everybody, especially as the Indian Constitution says, Article 51A, fundamental duties, each and every citizen has a role and responsibility to protect and safeguard his or her own environment. So we have to get involved. We need to step up. We need to take a stand. We need to raise our voice. We need to move into action. So let's just think about addressing climate change from the global to the local perspective. Many a times we fail to understand the linkages. We really need to understand that this is all interconnected. Climate change, when we are addressing climate change, we really need to think about the interlinkages that is there with our own life. So I just want to go flip through a few newspaper clippings which had come recently to just highlight to you what is the connection of climate change and all those related parameters to our own daily life. So just you can browse through the captions of this newspaper clipping. You don't have to read through the details. El Nino blamed for 54% drop in oil sardine catch. Oil sardine, which is a very common and affordable fishery resources for each one of us. 54% drop in oil sardine catch. So climate change, global warming, climate change and its impacts can directly affect our food resources. Rise in sea level, Cochin port placed 6th among 11 ports in center study. Even the global NGO Greenpeace has marked areas along the Marine Drive where, based on several feet of sea level rise, the place can be submerged underwater. So, one of the major impacts of global warming and climate change is sea level rise. If it happens, Cochin port, which is a huge revenue generation, for the country as well as for Kerala and employing a lot of our people. It is placed 6th among 11 ports in central government's study. Assam floods, which happened in the last several years, spare no humans and animals. As we all know, it's a one-horned rhinoceros, home to the one-horned rhinoceros, the Kaziranga National Park. Very few one-horned rhinoceros which is left. So many of them, as well as other wildlife and biodiversity, was killed, including loss of human life as well as other things. Is seawater the ultimate answer? Is seawater the ultimate answer to what? To drinking water. As you all know, in India, most of our major rivers are glacier-fed rivers. Or if you are looking at Kerala, our rivers, 44 rivers, are monsoon-fed rivers. So be it the major Indian rivers which are glacier-fed or the Kerala rivers which are monsoon-fed, if there is global warming and climate change, if our weather is going to change, it will have a major impact on our drinking water sources. So is seawater the ultimate answer? That is a question which falls right on our face. So just think about it. Bug watchers sound the alarm on mass insect extinction. So we feel we humans are very superior. We are big in size. We have the ability to think. We have the ability to distinguish between right and wrong. But are we really doing it? We have money and all those kind of things. Insects, they are very small. They are very insignificant. But just connect insects to flowering, fruiting, all those kind of things. If insects are to disappear, our flowers, our fruits, everything is gone. And just understand the impact it will have on our life. Climate crisis output loss to equal 80 million jobs. Corona has already wreaked havoc in the life and the economy of people and nations across the globe. And in addition to that, climate crisis, which is more of a long-spanning issue, output loss to equal 80 million jobs. So just understand how it can affect our economy, how it can affect our livelihoods, and how it can even affect the youth from finding good jobs tomorrow. So let's have some clear understanding climate. So it's usually a wrong thing that we use. How is the climate today? So the question is, we really need to understand between what is climate and weather. So how is the weather in Idiki now? So that's the right question, where we are talking about day-to-day affairs, whereas climate is weather over a longer span of time. Climate, how is the climate? The climate is so hot today. It's actually the weather is so hot today, whereas climate is something about weather which we talk on maybe 10, 20 or 50 years span. And climate change occurs when changes in the Earth's climate system result in new weather patterns that last for at least a few decades and maybe for millions of years. And this has now been very visible over the past so many years. And in 2021 now, in the month of March itself, we are at a point where we are not able to stand the heat. And April and May is yet to come before the monsoon set in June. And there are so many climate tipping points across the globe. I'm not going into the details of that. Climate change, there is always a question whether it is a myth or reality. There is an intergovernmental panel on climate change which says that human greenhouse gases is behind the climate change. You and me is behind climate change, whereas the non-governmental international panel on climate change says it is an act of nature, not human activity. So nature controls climate. So in the long span, climate change, maybe some years you will have heat, maybe in the next years you will have cold. It is all controlled by nature. So what I always say is that until and unless you cannot say with clarity, let the benefit of doubt go to the human-induced greenhouse gases, and we need to adopt a precautionary principle. We never have a precautionary principle. We always try to respond after the disaster has happened. But at least in this case, let's adopt a precautionary principle where we give the benefit of doubt to say that yes, the carbon which is emitted by you and me is a reason for climate change, and let's try to reduce it. And we have to understand climate change along with the human-induced extreme changes in the environment. There's a synergy which is brought about in climate change with the human-induced extreme changes. I can quote you the example of the floods which happened in 2018 and 19. Yes, we received a lot of rainfall. Yes, dams being opened created a problem. But more than all that, the encroachment on our water bodies, the illegal constructions, the reclamation of paddy fields and wetlands, dumping of waste into our water bodies, leading to clogging of the water channels, all these human-induced extreme changes in the environment created a synergy whereby the drastic impact of that increased rainfall, along with all the other things, created havoc on our state. So climate change, also the human-induced extreme changes like deforestation, urban tree cuttings, concreting, more of concrete structures, tiling around our houses, big things to small things. It makes extreme synergetic effects on global warming and climate change. So climate change and you, that is what we really need to understand. Many times when we talk about climate change, we tend to think global country heads have come together, they sat together, they discussed, they couldn't agree upon certain things, and that is why global warming and climate change is happening. We really need to understand global warming or climate change is really related to you and me. It is mainly human-induced through our industrialization, globalization, urbanization, and consumerism. And because of all these things, I don't have to go into each and every details. The word itself is self-explanatory. We have gone in for major industries. We have gone in for globalization, more of urbanization in the form of development, and consumerism. And this has all led to the greenhouse gases going up every day, every minute. If you don't agree with me, you should assess your own ecological footprint. Please go to www.footprintnetwork.org. This can be an exercise which the students are doing as part of this webinar. Please go to www.footprintnetwork.org and assess your own ecological footprint. Ecological footprint has got 4 components. That is a carbon footprint, food footprint, housing footprint, and the goods and services footprint. The carbon footprint is assessed based on your home energy use and your transportation. Food is based on your food patterns. Housing is based on how your dwelling is, and how your house is. Goods and services is on all the other goods and services that you use in your life. You can go and assess your own ecological footprint, and the ecological footprint will give you a value on how sustainable your life is. That means how much your footprint is on this earth. And that is more of a direct indicator of your contribution to all this human-induced changes in the environment. So when we talk about climate change, the manifestations, as we all know, we have heard reports, we have read through many scientific assessments. Rise in temperature is one thing. We are facing it every day. It is not a myth, it's a reality. Erratic rainfall, both quantity and periodicity. Earlier in Kerala, June 1st, when the schools were reopening, we used to have the onset of monsoon. But now, sometimes it is delayed, sometimes it is in advance, sometimes the quantity which is available is there, here and there. So we are seeing erratic rainfall in many ways. And sea level rise, which is a result of global warming. The polar ice caps are melting, which is adding a lot of fresh water into the oceans, which leads to salinity imbalance, which has got many direct and indirect impacts on the globe. And a direct impact is the sea level rise, which we are witnessing. And the impact of sea level rise, I have already told you. Even for a small state like Kerala, which has 573 kilometers of coastline, and we, as a state, we are second to population density next to West Bengal. And it is our coastal area which is having the highest population and the tenement density. So if sea level rise was to happen, what would be its impact in Kerala? Change in the polar ice caps, droughts. We have flash floods happening in India. Even in Kerala, we are having flash floods, drying up of riverbeds, and heat island effect, which is a direct impact of more of urbanization. We don't have the biggest scarcity that we have in Kerala is land. And because of that, and because of also that we have moved from joint family structure to nuclear family structures, and everybody wants a dwelling place. And we are putting up high-rise buildings, flats or apartments as you call it, everywhere. Urbanization, Kerala as such is called as an urban continuum. It is one city if you're looking at other states in India. And that is so much leading to the heat island effect, which is there in and around us. So rather than looking at the problem, we have to find a way out of it. Like Kerala, cancer is on the increase. When you have somebody with cancer, what is the immediate response? Should I go to Regional Cancer Center? Should I go to Kim's Pinnacle? Or should I go to Lakeshore in Kochi? That is a response. We never tend to think about how this cancer would have occurred. Is it because of the mobile tower radiation? Is it because of the new fast food culture that I have adopted? Is it because of unsegregated waste burning? So we don't try to look at the problem, we just try to find the way out of it. And that is the greatest threat to planet Earth. The greatest threat to planet Earth, as revealed in a recent study, is that you and me thinking that someone else will try to save it. The greatest threat to planet Earth, it is not pollution, it is not global warming and climate change, it is not invasives. It is the greatest threat to planet Earth is that you and me thinking that someone else will save it. So we really need to look at the problem rather than find a way out of it. What is the way out now that we have for our heating? Our temperature is increasing. What is the way out? Buy more and more ACs. Look at the newspapers. Take any newspaper which is there in Kerala and look at the front page. It is a full page advertisement of air conditioners. So that is what we are trying to find the way out of it. We have money. We can go and buy an AC. We can have general air conditioners or split air conditioners. That is what we are trying to find the way out. We are not trying to look at the problem and try to find a permanent solution by addressing the root of it. More and more air conditioners at home, in the car, in office, in religious establishments, even now churches, mosques, everybody, they are also putting up air conditioners. So this was a culture which was there in the Middle East. Everything was air conditioned there. Now Kerala is also moving in that pattern. And more inverters. Because of the heat, we just can't tolerate even 10 or 15 minutes of power cut. So we are putting more and more inverters in our homes, which has got only 30% efficiency. And battery waste is also another issue that we have. So if you're looking at Kerala, when we are talking about climate change, there are contributing sectors. The contributing sectors are, one is energy, second is industries. Per se, we are not an industrial state. Transportation, housing, and real estate. So these are the contributing sectors. And whereas when you are addressing about climate change, we have some impacted sectors also. Whereas that is the sector which bears the brunt, or which bears the impact of global warming and climate change. That is mainly forest, biodiversity and wildlife, or agriculture, marine and coast. Especially, as I said, we have 573 kilometers of coastline with its own habitats, microhabitats and ecosystems, and inhabiting biodiversity, and also the water resources that we have, the 44 rivers, as well as all the other water bodies, be it the private tanks and the ponds, or the freshwater lakes and all the other water resources that we have. So in Kerala, we can look at energy, industries, transportation, and housing, real estate as a contributing marine and coast and the water resources. So biodiversity is the variety and the variability of life on Earth. NASA, ISRO, they are all sending probes here and there to Mars, to Moon, and all those kind of things to find life. But it is this blue planet, this planet Earth, which has so much of biodiversity, which is a variety and variability of life on Earth. And that is what keeps us human beings also alive. It is not our size, it is not our wisdom, it is not our money power, it is not our ability, but that the global biodiversity, other life forms also helps us to sustain ourselves. So we really need to understand the connection. Climate change in climate has consequences on the biophysical environment at the species level, as well as at the ecosystem level also. So if you're looking at climate change in Kerala, impact on land, drying up and desertification, and land left fallow. These are two of the major impacts that we have with regard to the land resources. If you're looking on water, change in monsoon intensity and timing, as I told you, 44 rivers that we have, all the rivers are originating from the Western Ghats, and change in monsoon plays a havoc on the rivers as well as the other water bodies in the state. We have higher evaporation as the temperature is increasing. We have a higher evaporation. Salinity changes in the ocean, which creates so many other anomalies in the global circulation patterns. Also, extraction more than inflow recharge. Whatever we are getting, our water bodies are recharged by monsoon. Our extraction is more and more every day. The population is increasing, whereas our per capita water consumption is also increasing. So the extraction is more than the inflow or the recharge. On the ocean and the coast, I told you 573 kilometers. It is otherwise itself normally affected by accretion and erosion. I told you about oil sardine. The recent reports say that there's a major shift in the population of oil sardine from the Kerala coast towards Andhra Pradesh and other parts. Marine turtle, jellyfish. Marine turtles are there in the ocean. They are killed. I just now, from 10 to 10:30, I just gave a talk in another webinar on marine turtle conservation along the Kerala coast. Marine turtles are killed. Their eggs are eaten. Their nests are destroyed. And they are eaten for its meat. What happens? It creates an imbalance in the ocean ecosystem, whereas a jellyfish bloom happens. And jellyfish bloom really puts a problem on our fishery resources, which is available as a good source of food. Sea surface temperature increase, which affects the primary productivity and also impact on the fisheries and the fishermen's livelihoods. We have a huge population of fishermen living along our Kerala coast. They are already in the socially or the financially or the economically backward communities, and this climate change is putting a much more strain on their livelihood as well as on their habitats. Impact on the forest. The Kerala government says that we have around 29% forest cover, much more than the national average of 13%. But safely, let us say that it might be 17 to 21%. But then climate change puts a major stress on our forest cover also. We have different types of forests: evergreen, semi-evergreen, moist deciduous, dry deciduous, and it is being impacted by climate change with insects and all those kind of things. Forest fires, which is so destructive. Controlled forest fires is good for the forest, but many times uncontrolled forest fires are wreaking havoc in our forest areas. Forest fires are not just natural, it is anthropogenic also, man-made also, I understand, and I agree with you. Invasive alien species is one other thing. Dr. Sajeev, who talked to you just before me, he's an expert on invasive alien species in the forest areas, working from the KFRI. You can talk to him for more details. Even our tiger reserves are being taken over by invasive alien species. And pests which were there earlier have disappeared, and pests from other parts of the country as well as otherwise have now started moving to our land. Locust invasion was a recent phenomenon which we witnessed in India. Impact on agriculture, paddy. Rice Research Institute Center at Alapura is developing salt-resistant paddy varieties. Why? Because we have saltwater intrusion. NICRA is a central government project which is running, which is called as the National Initiative for Climate Resilient Agriculture. Major for the tuber crops, cash crops, and all those kind of things, mainly with focus on rubber also. I was talking to the director of Rubber Board recently, and he was saying that our focus is now mainly shifting to the northeast. As you all know, Kerala, we used to be we used to take pride that we have so much of rubber estates, and our economy was also so much enriched by the revenue from rubber. But now, Rubber Board, we have the Rubber Board here, we have the Rubber Research Institute, everything. But sad to say, their focus is shifting to the northeast. So that change can affect the livelihoods, which can affect our economy, and which can affect the land use of our area also. And climate change in Kerala, look at the impact on health. Rise in temperature and resultant heat. Talk to your parents or your grandparents. They wouldn't have heard about heat strokes and stuff like that. But every day now, in the newspaper, as well as in WhatsApp and all those kind of things, and you hear the Directorate of Health Services also giving out notifications saying how we need to be careful. Increase in respiratory diseases, higher pressure on bats from habitat degradation and climate change. Activity generally is going down because of the increase and impact on tourism. As you all know, Kerala revenue, we are not per se an industrial state. Our revenue is so much dependent on tourism, and Kerala is now being considered as a less preferred tourist destination because of the climate change, because of the heat and all those other kind of things. Impact on the biodiversity, higher mammals. Water stress inside the forest areas is leading to bigger cats straying out, or even human elephants. And this leads to human-wildlife conflict. And dry habituated birds like black-headed ibis, Asian open-bill, Indian peafowl, and all are seen more often in Kerala now. Many times in the newspaper, it comes as a big news. New species of birds seen in Kerala. Is that a matter of joy, or is that which is seen? Many people tell me, mile, Indian peafowl is now becoming very common in Kerala. It's not a matter of pride, it's a matter of concern, because Indian peafowl is a dry habituated bird. So if you are seeing more of peacock in Kerala, it means that the climate in Kerala is also impact on the biodiversity. As you all know, Kanikonna, which is one of the most important things for Vishu, which is a state festival, which is a prominent festival in Kerala. Untimely flowering of Kanikonna is a big issue now. Insect population sharp decline connected to fruiting and flowering. Snakes and conflict with humans because of the heat is going up. There's so much of cases where snakes are coming out of their hiding places and coming into conflict with humans, which leads to snake bites and also more killing of the snakes, which are either poisonous or non. Climate change in India, we had a national action plan on climate change shared by the Prime Minister. This was initiated when Sri Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister. There are 8 missions under that. I'm not going to the details. You can look at that. And when you're looking at addressing climate change in Kerala also, in Kerala, under the government of Kerala, we have the most new department called as the Department of Environment and Climate Change, which is which has its office in the Tambanur KSRTC complex. And once the Department of Environment and Climate Change came, they came out with a state action plan on climate change also, how the state and its departments should address the climate change. And after the formulation of the state action plan on climate change, the government had asked WWF, we did the work on preparing a position paper on climate change in India from Kasaragod to Kerala, covered everything connected to climate change, and we prepared a position paper and submitted to the government for further action. The Department of Environment and Climate Change is establishing their district offices also. And for research and development, they instituted the Institute of Climate Change Studies in Kottayam, but unfortunately, it is not going in the way it was envisaged as of now. I have been in this field for the last so many years, and some of the practical issues that we face in Kerala when we are trying to address climate changes, many times when, climate change, be it in the housing sector or be it PWD, be it water resources, anything, they have to address climate change. But many times, the departments say it is not our mandate. It is the mandate of the Department of Environment and Climate Change. We are looking at water resources, or we are looking at housing, we are looking at roads and bridges. It is not our mandate. So the government should understand, or the department should understand that climate change, it should be a mandate cutting across all the departments that we have in the state. Change in priority for governments, both central and state. It's a very sad state of affairs. Even though we have the Department of Environment and Climate Change and all those kind of things, I'm sad to say that still government gives a lower priority, both at the central government as well as the state government level, for addressing climate change per se. Political agendas and indifferences. You have the UDF, you have the LDF, now the BJP coming in, you have the BJP in the center and all those kind of things. There are political agendas, indifferences, projects are not taken up, funds are not properly utilized because of these political agendas. Low priority generally. Lack of local level data and information. One of the most important things to address climate change is that we need long-term, solid, good data. And that is something which we really lack at the local level. And vested interests. Right from individuals to institutions, to corporates, to governments, there's a lot of vested interests which plays havoc on addressing climate change. Then again, it is a fragmented approach. Agriculture department says, this is our mandate, we have this much of funds, we'll do this. Whereas the housing department says, this is a fund which has been allocated to us. We have this kind of projects. We have this kind of mandate. We'll do something. There is never an integrated approach. So it's always fragmented approach, which, so that I agree, we are doing things in bits and pieces. We are not looking at the bigger picture. So many of the things are funds oriented. It's not on the long run. When the funds are there, things move. When the funds are exhausted, things drop. Research without social relevance. Be it in the universities, be it in the R&D department, there's a lot of research which is going on. But is it really changing the lives of people? There's a lot of research without social relevance. Lack of long-term funding. Addressing climate change, like if you're taking a small project, a climate change project should be minimum 5 years project. It's always so difficult to get funding, long-term funding for 5-year projects. Government departments as well as others always going for annual projects or maximum 2 to 3 years. Something like climate change has to be a minimum 5-year project. So lack of long-term funding is a major issue in projects and programs. Mentality to challenge rather than accept. We need out-of-the-box approach. We need out-of-the-box solutions. So do we have the mentality to challenge all this, or are we just accepting it? Lack of cooperation and consultation. Inside the state, between the states, with the global partners, there's so much of opportunity to cooperate and consult. But does it really happen? It does not happen because of the short-sightedness, because of political interest, because of vested interest, and all this kind of thing. So there's a general lack of integration. Fragmented approach is there, as I told you, central government ministries, departments, state governments, local self-government institutions, R&D institutions, NGOs, corporates and businesses, civil society organization, individuals. This should have been coming together to address the issue of climate change, whereas there are bits and pieces here and there trying to address the major issue of climate change. And integration. Addressing climate change needs approach of physics, chemistry, biology, sociology, ecology and environment, economics, health, international relations. So it has to have an integrated approach also when we are trying to address global warming and climate change. That also is many a times lacking. University departments, government departments, they have their own expertise. They do things in their own way. There is no looking at working together where we do not compete with each other, but we complement each other. So the right intervention should be long-term vision with short-term and long-term deliverables. Now, our government is going to change here. Be it the UDF government or the LDF government, projects and programs addressing climate change should go on the long term with short-term and long-term deliverables. Now, next year, if there is a continuation of the present LDF government or the UDF comes in place, they should ensure that projects and programs that is run addressing climate change should go forward. What happens is that the next government coming will not run the projects which has been initiated by the previous government, because the previous government gets the credit for it. They start their own projects, maybe by the 3rd year. The 4th or 5th year, they also need to move out. So the projects fail. That is common in Kerala that we are seeing around us. It should be based on the pillars of sustainability of projects: ecological integrity, economic efficiency, and social acceptability. Projects and intervention should be based on ecological strong foundations. It should be economically viable, and it should be accepted by people also, social acceptability. It should have a multidisciplinary approach. University departments, NGOs, colleges, schools, everybody with their own expertise needs to come together. Multi-institutional involvement, multi-nation cooperation. Our developed countries have gone a way forward in addressing all these issues. So technology is available, solutions are available from the globe, which we can replicate here, beyond the political divide and beyond the term of government. So addressing interventions on climate change should be beyond the political divide, and it should go beyond the term of the government, be it the center or the state. Climate change and biodiversity. Recent newspaper reports of impacts. A global deal for postponing Pralaya. Temperature rise and climate change affect not just some countries, but the entire globe on which all species live. Humans, animals, plants, fish, microbes. So, as I told you, global warming and climate change is mainly human-induced because of our industrialization, because of our globalization, because of our urbanization, and because of our consumerism. But that human-induced global warming and climate change is not just affecting us, it's not just affecting land. It is affecting the air, it is affecting the land, it is affecting the water. It's affecting all spheres of life, all ecosystems, and their inhabiting wildlife and biodiversity. So what we are doing is impacting the insects, the mammals, as well as all the other species. We really need to understand we are all interconnected. We are one part in that web of life. So only if the natural ecosystems are there, only if that services are available, the values, functions, and services of the natural ecosystems are available. Only if the tigers are there, will the forest be protected. Only if the forests are protected, we will get our amla and honey. Only if the turtles are there, the marine ecosystem will be protected. Only if the marine ecosystem is protected, our sustenance is there because we get good fishery resources for our food. So that understanding really needs to be there. Temperature rise and climate change affect not just some countries, but the entire globe. And it affects all species. Climate change affects in the Western Himalayan ecosystems of India, evidences and strategies. As I told you, if you're looking at India, all our major rivers are glacier-fed rivers. So climate change... Hello?
Dear participant, please mute your audio. Your session is not...
So climate change impact in the Himalayan ecosystem really leads to the fast melting of the glaciers, which affects our Indian rivers. And as I told you, if you're looking at Kerala, our rivers are monsoon fed, and that also, when you have erratic rainfall, that also impacts our water bodies. 300 Himalayan yaks starved to death in Sikkim after a bout of unusually harsh winter weather. It's just a report which came 2 years back. 300 Himalayan yaks starved to death in Sikkim.
Mr. Kindly mute your video, please. Mr. Kumar, I request you to mute your video. Sir, you can continue.
Yeah. So as I told you earlier, this is a newspaper clipping which is there, which came in the Hindu. Scorching heat forcing animals out of Sishalam Biosphere Reserve. That is in Andhra Pradesh. But I told you about tigers, leopards, I told you about elephants, even snakes. So the increasing heat, the increase or the climate is leading to increased human-wildlife conflict. And human-wildlife conflict in Kerala is not just about tigers, leopards, as well as elephants. It is even now up to squirrels, wild boars, peacocks, and even the rodents. So every day we have more increased human-wildlife conflict. Climate change, disturbance to habitat are affecting the breeding patterns of Indian birds. So look at how our careless impact on the global environment is affecting the natural ecosystems and leading to disaster for the life of other also. So in saying that we have the Western Ghats, which is hotspot of biodiversity. At Western Ghats, which is home to our forests, our wildlife, and the abundant biodiversity, is also majorly impacted by global warming and climate change. Western Ghats biodiversity faces threat, says the report. This is the Western Ghats is the point of origin of all our 44 rivers. It contributes to 21% of our forest cover. It is home to our tigers, leopards, elephants, and all the other biodiversity. It is home to our tribal communities. It is regulating our climate. It is giving us the amla. It is giving us the honey and all those kind of things. It is giving us a lot of revenue for our tourism activities and all those kind of things. So Western Ghats biodiversity faces threat. So when you hear this, when you read this report, you should not get the impression that this is something which is happening far away. You should really understand that if Western Ghats is affected by the global warming and climate change induced by me, it is directly going to affect me, my family, my society, as well as my state. Kerala saying danger signs of climate change, CM. Our own Chief Minister, Mr. Pinarayi Vijayan, has said that Kerala is seeing danger signs of climate change. But are we really taking that on a priority and addressing to find long-term solutions is the major question. Climate change threatens the Nilgiri tar. We have Munnar. In Munnar, we have the Eravikulam National Park, where we have the Nilagurni blooming and all those kind of things. And we have the very beautiful Nilgiri tar, which is a scheduled species under the Indian Wildlife Protection Act. Climate change is threatening the Nilgiri tar. Is Nilgiri tar the cause of climate change? No, it is you and me. Many times it is, if we connect it to energy, our WWF's program itself says, our program itself it's named as climate change and energy. Why do we give the name as climate change and energy? Climate change is mainly addressed by, is mainly aggravated by the increased energy production and increased energy consumption. So if I say this in the context of Kerala, many of you will think, oh, in Kerala, we are mainly dependent on hydroelectric projects. We are very green. No, that is a wrong assumption that we have. For the Kerala State Electricity Board, who is providing us the energy, 40 to 50 or 60% must be met from our own state hydroelectric projects. Another 40 to 50% is coming from the central grid. And the central grid is mainly powered by the coal-based thermal power plants in Ramagundam in Andhra Pradesh. And coal-based thermal power plants are a major cause for increased greenhouse gas emissions, which aggravates global warming and climate change. So when we as Keralites use each unit of electricity, it is not green electricity, which is coming from our hydroelectric projects. It might be from the central pool, and we are indirectly or directly accelerating global warming and climate change. And that climate change is threatening the Nilgiri tar, which is pride of our state also. Trouble brews for coffee growers. Look at another impact in the cash crop sector. We have coffee growers in our highland areas, and trouble is brewing because of global warming and climate change. Of peacocks and climate change, as I told you, experts study link between Kerala's dry weather and the spread of peafowl. We have, in Kerala, we have declared a peafowl sanctuary in Palakkad, Chulannur Peafowl Sanctuary. But now, in other districts also, peafowls are becoming very common. And the experts are studying that link between Kerala's dry weather and the spread of peafowl. It is our national bird, but don't take pride when you see it in Kerala to say that, oh, we are having so much of more peacocks now. It is a matter of huge concern. So I would like to conclude by saying that the oceans be rich in life, let clean waters flow, let fishes swim, let birds and butterflies fly around. And with that, I would thank you for your patient listening. Questions and clarifications are welcome. So just to tell you a final comment, global warming and climate change, it is not a myth, it's a reality. It is not because of disagreement between global leaders. The reason behind global warming and climate change is you and me. And we can make a difference. We can adopt, please, as a part of this exercise, go to www.footprintnetwork.org. It will help you to assess your ecological footprint. And based on that ecological footprint, make changes in your life so that you can you can bring down your ecological footprint, especially your carbon footprint, and you can ensure that you have a sustenance and this can be a healthy planet. This next week, March 27th, the last Saturday of the month, every year we have the global campaign called as the Earth Hour. Be part of the Earth Hour also. And Earth Hour is the biggest grassroots movement that we have across the globe, which addresses global warming and climate change through energy conservation and energy efficiency. So do the possible so that you can reduce your carbon footprint and ensure sustenance of planet Earth, ourselves, as well as other life forms also. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Ranjan Matthew Varghese, sir, for your very fruitful session. Now I would invite the participants for their queries. If you have any questions to raise, you can ask our beloved Ranjan Matthew, sir.
Could you please explain the impact of land in Kerala a little more?
Impact of global warming and climate change on land.
Yeah.
Yes.
As I told you, one of the major impacts is the drying up which is there, and agriculture also being unviable, and the more of the land being left fallow. As you all know, generally based on our change in the family structure from the joint family to the nuclear family, as well as change in land holdings, where we had earlier used to have larger land holdings and agriculture was viable. Another reason is that agriculture is no more a dignified profession or anything in Kerala. People are moving away from agriculture, but global warming and climate change is aggravating that situation where even I showed you the classic example where rubber, coffee, and all those kind of things. Agriculture is becoming more and more unviable because. So when I talked to the director of Rubber Research Board, what he was telling me is that our focus is moving to Northeast, because Northeast also there is increase in temperature, but that is negated by the cold spell that they have. But in Kerala, unfortunately, we do not have that cold climate. We are only witnessing normal summers and more harsh summers with the increase in the heat. So generally on the land, that is the drying up and agriculture becoming non-viable, and all this direct and the indirect impacts which comes along with that.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions? One question in the chat box: are humans responsible for climate change?
I would say yes. Maybe one can have a difference of opinion, but as for me, it is we are really the impact of climate change. I wouldn't say, like as I told in my initial slides, there might be a role played by nature also, but the impact of climate change is synergized by the human interventions. By as we all know, the small example is every day our emission of greenhouse gases is increasing. So if our greenhouse gas emission is increasing, what should ideally be happen? We should be ideally having more trees or green cover which can sequester this carbon. But is that the real scenario? Even in our forest areas are under a severe threat. Like you know, Sabarimala. Sabarimala used to be a forest shrine. In the master plan of Sabarimala, what is the initial recommendation is to cut down 273 trees to create more amenities for tourists, for visiting pilgrims. I am in Trivandrum. Technopark is our pride, where we have all our IT companies. So from the airport, from Chaka Junction to Technopark, to widen the road, we had to cut down around 4,300 avenue trees. So all that is going. So our carbon emission is increasing, whereas our tree cover or green cover is coming down. So that is really aggravating the situation. So looking at that, based on our industrialization, based on our consumerism, do we have a municipal solid waste management system here? We don't have. So what is the solution to that? We are burning unsegregated waste, right? So that is also aggravating. So each and everything that we are doing in our life, if we critically examine it, you will understand and you will agree with me that we really are aggravating the situation. I fully agree with you, or I would go by you to say that climate, nature also might be having its role to play. But the impact of climate change on us is aggravated by our own careless attitudes and activities.
Okay, thank you, sir. There is one more question in the chat box. One person is asking: is there any relation between meat consumption and climate change?
Meat consumption, obviously, when you have that has got a relation in both the ways. Like one of the major emissions of livestock breeding is methane. So when you have more of meat eating and you have a meat producing industry, then you're contributing more to it. But on the flip side, if you go in for vegetarianism, then the livestock population is obviously going to increase, and there also you will have a problem of methane emission. So you really need to find a balance between both and then take it forward. So obviously, yes, more of livestock population will have an impact on climate change.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other queries? So there is a question in the chat box. I shall read it for you.
Yeah.
When we say climate change is local rather than global, how can we shift from the usage of single-use polythene bags to cloth bags locally? What policy changes should be brought in this regard?
So global warming and climate change is I wouldn't say it's a local phenomena. It is like, as I told you earlier, it is, if you're looking at India, you cannot address it just for Kerala. It is affecting all the states. It is not just India. Other countries are also being affected. But where should be the difference in our approach comes from? That has to be local. So that is what I'm planning to say. That makes a big impact on the microclimate also. So you have more of greenery around you. You have a better microclimate around you. You cut down the trees, you will have more of increased heat. So similar to that, what you rightly said, one of the major campaigns that WWF India is running is something called as GUGB. It's called as Give Up to Give Back. Mother Earth or planet Earth is giving us all that we want, our food, our water, our air, everything. Our father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi, has said, planet Earth has enough to meet our needs. But now we are saying there is not enough to meet our needs. We need to move to our basic needs. So Give Up to Give Back campaign says about avoiding single-use plastics. It's not possible for us to avoid plastics. Plastics has become an integral part of our life. But there is good chance that you can totally avoid single-use plastics. You can reduce the plastics which is coming into your life. You can reuse and recycle plastics, and also any plastics which is coming into your life, you responsibly finally dispose of the plastic which is there. A plastic that you and me, a polythene carry bag which you might be using on land, maybe in Trivandrum or in Cochin, that ultimately when you dispose it carelessly, it finds its transportation through the water and finally reaches the ocean. We are doing work on marine turtle conservation. Many times, turtles, Schedule 1 species, Olive Ridley turtle, and washed ashore on our coast. When you do the postmortem, what do you find inside their plastic carry bags? Why? Because plastic carry bags, when it floats in the ocean water, it resembles jellyfish. And marine turtles mainly eat jellyfish as their food. So they tend to think that it is jellyfish, and they consume the plastic, and their intestines get clogged with this plastic, and they get washed ashore on the coast. And remember, it's a Schedule 1 species under the Indian Wildlife Protection Act. Otherwise itself, we are burning our unsegregated waste across every place. Directly and indirectly, we are causing a lot of havoc on the environment. So addressing global warming and climate change is a global phenomenon, but addressing global warming and climate change needs to be local, to start right from the individual.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other queries? Is there any wide changes happening in water because of climate changes?
Obviously, you can go through newspaper clippings or when you have rain, a little increased rain, you are having flooding. Why does that happen? Because as I told you earlier, our human interventions on our laterite hillocks are gone. നമ്മുടെ ചെങ്കൽ കുന്നുകൾ, laterite hillocks, they are sponges of planet Earth. When you're receiving rainfall, the micropores inside the laterite hillocks should have acted as sponges to store the water and slowly release it to our other water bodies as well as our groundwater structures. That is gone. The laterite bricks are cut out, or the laterite soil is excavated, and they are used to reclaim paddy fields and wetlands. Paddy fields and wetlands are called as floodplains of planet Earth. So both the organs as well as the floodplains are gone, and hence when we have slight increase in rainfall, you have incidents of flooding. And just after that, just after your monsoon or you have water shortage, because there is no floodplains and you are not allowing water to stay there. All the water is ultimately drained into the ocean, and post rainy days you have water shortage or water scarcity. So water resource, both are happening. You have floods as well as you have droughts. And the central government, when they are referring to Kerala, they have put a very unique name. It's called as wet drought. A state like Kerala receiving so much of rainfall, they just can't understand why do you have water scarcity or drought. So they have put a very unique name called as wet drought. to the water scarcity in Kerala.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other queries? Sir, as per the National Biodiversity Act, at the local body level, there has to be a biodiversity register to be maintained. So how far is it functioning in India?
In India, it might be in data from other states, but in Kerala, we have done a very good board who has the main mandate of implementing the Kerala Biodiversity Act has almost completed. There is very few local self-government institutions, few panchayats where it needs to be completed, but otherwise almost like, I think I would say 95 to 98% of the People's Biodiversity Register have been completed. And now they are, Kerala State Biodiversity Board is in the process of updating the information also on the People's Biodiversity Register. But then also there is a huge debate on whether the information in the People's Biodiversity Register can be used or whether it is scientifically accurate and all those kind of things. It is citizen science data. So it will have its own limitations. I would go by that. That is another topic of debate. I will not go into it. But Kerala, I would say, if you're ranking the states in India, Kerala would be rank 1 in People's Biodiversity Register in India.
Okay, nice to hear that. Okay, any other queries? Participants, if you have any queries, you can ask. Suggestions to save water. One question in the chat box. Is there any suggestion to save water?
There are so many suggestions to save water. We WWF, we have brought out a poster itself to say 10 commandments for saving water. So, so many things that you can do, which is very much known to you also, starting right from morning, brushing your teeth. Can you do it with just one mug of water, or do you do it under a running tap? So individual steps, household level. What do you do? Do you have rainwater harvesting in your home? Every home, there is a possibility. Now, sheet trussing is common in Kerala. To prevent the heat, we are doing sheet trussing. So using that sheet trussing, can we harvest the rain which is falling on our rooftop and give it to a water recharge pit? That can be done. Reuse of grey water, water from your kitchens. Many of the houses, it is directly being connected to the drainage system. But can we use it for our gardening and farming and all those kind of things? Rainwater storage, which can be recirculated and used for flushing toilets. It can be used for washing cars and all those kind of things. I can show you so many houses where all this have been done. The only question is, are we ready to take a little inconvenience initially to implement all this kind of things and make small changes in our lifestyle by which we can? Many times what happens is that we feel that these are all very insignificant. We should do major projects, big things. That only will make an impact. It is individual actions, it is family actions which turns into society and transforms a nation. So it should start right from the individual. There's so many things you can do.
Okay, thank you. So one more question in the chat box. Is there how can we bring about changes in laws and policies pertaining to environment?
See, there is the need of the hour is not on bringing change in laws and policies. The need of the hour is in proper implementation. The laws and policies for nature and environment, for anything and everything, you have laws and policies here. Be it the coast, you have the Kerala Coastal Zone Management Rules, as well as the authority for water bodies we have, and all those kind of things. But I told you, the problem is we do not have any integration. That is one of the major issues, and implementation is so laxed because it is not given the highest priority. So that is the issue. It is not making changes in the laws and policies, but it is in the effective implementation where each and every player comes together. The government department has got a role. The R&D institutions have got a role. The NGOs have got a role as a facilitator between the government as well as the people. The university departments have got a role. So everybody has got a role to play. When we come together and implement things, that is where it makes a difference. We have enough and more laws and legislations. It is the implementation which needs to have a radical change.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I think we can take one more question. Participants, if you have any queries, you can ask. We can have one more question. If you have any queries further, you can ask now. One more question in the chat box. That is, as we know, renewable sources provide only a small portion of our energy needs. And since we establishing nuclear power is so expensive, what approaches can we bring about?
See, the three major sources of three conventional sources of energy is one is hydel energy, hydroelectric projects, which Kerala is now saturated. Because there's so much of inundation of forest cover leading to biodiversity loss and all those kind of things, starting right from Silent Valley to Adrapalli project, we don't have the possibility of going in for any of hydroelectric projects. We established a thermal power plant in Kayangulam, but we are not running it. Why? Because in Kerala, we do not have the fuel to run a thermal power plant. We will have to bring it from some other state, whereas the cost of generation will be very high. The third is the nuclear power plant. We are not having a nuclear power plant in Kerala, not because of the finance, not because of the lack of willpower or anything, because we do not have the land. Nuclear power plants comes in the coastal areas, which should have uninhabited large tracts of land. As I told you, Kerala stands next to West Bengal in population density. And it is our coastal areas which is having the highest population density. Can you show me any spot in Kerala where you have uninhabited coastal land? It is not there. So nuclear is totally out of this thing. So the only option for us in Kerala is to take the energy efficiency route. That is why we have moved from incandescent bulbs to CFL lamps and from CFL now to LED and all those kind of things. And the next best option is to go renewable. We as WWF have done a major study for the whole state of Kerala as well as for Palakkad district to say how by 2030 Kerala can go 100% renewable energy. Some countries are there which do not see the sun for half the part of the year. But whereas for us in Kerala, Surya Bhagavan is there right on top of our head 365 days. So there is immense potential from individual households to institutional as well as major thing. Land availability is a major issue that we have in Kerala. So it is the building rooftops that we should use. Households, institutions, hospitals, government departments, everything. You can use the solar rooftop to generate more renewable energy. And there is immense potential that we can go 100%. Classic example is Sial, Cochin International Airport, which is totally being run on solar. So that potential is something which we can replicate for the whole state also.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Because of the time limit, we have to wind up the session. So it was a very resourceful session from the part of you. So it was a very good learning for us also. So I will move on to the organizers for the vote of thanks.
Somebody is saying the vote of thanks were not audible.
Yeah, there are some technical errors. The organizers, you can have your vote of thanks.
I welcome Anshu M., the trainee social worker of Shabrisha College, for vote of thanks. I welcome Anshu.
Yes, Anju, carry on. Anju, you are not audible for us.
Anyway, thanks, accepted.
Okay, there might be some technical.
That's fine.
Thank you for accepting our invitation, sir. So it was a very wonderful class. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your patient hearing, and I hope that some of the things that I have said will trigger you into more responsible action. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you so
So
much.
can you share your PPT?
I can share it. You can give me. Somebody has Harish Kumar send me the mail. I'll send it to that email ID.
Okay, we will send you, ma'am. Once we collect the PPT, we will send to you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much.
Sure, thanks.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
I'll take leave now because I was part of another webinar and they have an expert panel discussion at the end.
Okay,
So
sure.
I'll have to
Sure,
join
you
there
can leave.
also.
You can leave. It
Okay,
was a pleasure
thank you.
meeting you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Donna, we are winding up the session now, Donna. Do we have another session now, or is it in the afternoon? Somebody from the organizers part?
Sir, there will be an afternoon session at 4 o'clock, which is going to handle by Mr. Prafalla Samindra, who's an Indian environmentalist and also the environmental prize winner from Odisha.
So the next technical session will be at 4 p.m., right?
Yes, sir, 4 p.m.
So we are having a break now, right?
Yes, sir. Now we are having break.
Okay, thank you so much. So the dear participants, we will have the next technical session at 4 p.m. So kindly be present in particular session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The session will be conducted at 4 p.m. So all the participants will join and that session will be taken by Ms. Prafula Samandara, on the topic of global climate crisis and inequality.